welcome to Renewalcast today, everyone. We're changing things up again today. We have a guest with us, Gavin Retzer. He's the pastor of First Baptist Church in Brookings, South Dakota, and I'm going to let him introduce himself here. Gavin, you want to just tell us a little bit about you and your family and in your ministry there in Brookings?
Sure. Thanks, Cole. Thanks, guys, for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. Well, yeah, I mean, the basics, if there's anything you want to know, you'll have to ask. But Colt and I crossed paths in our seminary years. It's 16 to 20 years ago, I guess, now, right?
Wow, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm from Aberdeen, South Dakota. I'm in Brookings, South Dakota now. I've been here for 16, 17 years and pastor that whole time at First Baptist Church, which is across from the Children's Museum, the South Dakota Children's Museum. There's a giant dinosaur right across the street where I'm pointing that I can hear roaring during the summer. Maybe we'll be able to hear it while we're talking. And I'm married 2020, so we've been married for 20 years. We have an 18-year-old daughter, senior. We have a 13-year-old daughter in middle school and a 6-year-old son. I'm a Christian.
Good. That's a requirement to be on the podcast.
And then I'm also Reformed, little R, Baptistic, little B. I'm complementarian, conservative. I'm a Bible guy. That's what I am.
Good.
And I'm glad to talk about churchy stuff. I have done no prep because you said that we're going to talk about things that I don't need to prep about. So
yeah, I was going to try.
I love it, and I love to talk about church and church stuff and history, and so I'm all up for this.
You're a churchman.
I'm a church man. By God's grace, I hope to be one someday. At least the rest of my days.
Tell us a little bit about Equip. How is that? Is that part of is that a ministry of your church? Is that
great question? Yeah, great question. So you know about parachurch ministries. There's Campus Crusade. There's Navigators, which is a great ministry. The head of Navigators here is one of our elders here. But we also have our own college ministry that is under the authority of this local church, and that would separate it from parachurch college ministries that perhaps encourage church involvement or whatever. But ours is connected to the church, and Luke, who runs it, is an elder here, and it meets here as well. And the students are encouraged to join. Much of the leadership are members. They go through membership class, baptism, whatever, and they become servants and even leaders and so forth. So programmatically, it's probably a lot like the Navigators with an emphasis on discipleship, large group meetings, but that emphasis on the local church and being under the authority of a local church is crucial. And almost all of the men, there hasn't been a ton, but almost all of the men and women for that matter who have gone to the mission field for periods of time have come through that college ministry first. So it's been a blessing. When we came here, there were no college students in a college town at this little church, and someone had said, "You got to reach out to the colleges." And my view at that point was, they don't give any money. They're not around much of the year, and this church is in a shambles. I can't afford that. I can't afford to spend time on that. But looking back now, that was the wrong perspective, to be sure, given how our church identity is very much shaped by those young people and them passing through here and the vitality of that and the environment it creates where we're just always dealing with people making all the biggest decisions of their life and working through all the theological issues that you would want to sit and talk with people about that they don't want to. Well, students want to, so that's a little bit about having a college ministry in your church. So, yeah,
that's good. Well, Gavin, thanks for being on today. I just appreciate you and we kind of cross paths a little bit on social media and stuff like that. So I see some of the things you post and kind of get a little idea, some of the things maybe you're interested in. So that's kind of where I kind of decided to come up with this particular topic today. And some of the things that are going on in the world today. You guys probably heard there's a pastor and I use the word, I don't know what else, a guy who claims to be a pastor in Georgia by the name of Raphael Warnock. And he's running for political office. He's running as a Democrat. He's pastor of a famous church, Ebenezer Baptist Church. And he has said that his position on abortion is compatible with the Christian faith. And he's basically open for, he supports abortion at all places. So this has sparked some conversation all over the place. Tony Dungy maybe famously kind of had a little correspondence there on Twitter, said something about, I wonder what book he uses as his guiding principles, as if he's a Christian, because it certainly can't be the Bible. All he has to do is read Psalm 139, and you just realize that the Christian faith is just not compatible with abortion. So I guess I'm sitting here saying, okay, we're calling this guy a pastor, and just calling the guy a pastor is almost legitimizing his warped view on just this one issue of abortion. So my question, I guess I want to just throw out here is pastoral qualifications. What kind of guy do we need behind the pulpit? Where do we start on this? If you're going back in time before, Raphael Warnock, is the pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, and the pastor search committee comes to you and says, what kind of guy do we need here? What are we gonna say?
Well, just say when.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I suppose I would have answered that question differently a long time ago. But part of the deepening of convictions through the years, sort of the casting off of methodological, red herrings and church growth strategies and everything else, was a rediscovery of rich ecclesiology and dead authors that talked a lot about ministry qualifications. And so not all of them are dead, of course. There's a lot of good books these days, and we read a lot of them. But there are books like William Still's The Work of the Pastor. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Even Paul Tautkus, I'm not sure that's how you say his name, but he was at ACBC Colt a couple years ago. He has a little book that's actually pretty recent. It was endorsed by John MacArthur, called I think Shepherding the Sheep, Shepherding the Flock of God, maybe. Anyways, but what books like that and so many others, you could go to Baxter or whatever. It's just the idea that it's what you're looking for is something that the world hasn't been telling us we should be looking for in pastors for a long time. And so obviously you have the kind of the CEO, president, business type model, and then that transitions into sort of a business administrator, entertainer, communicator kind of thing. And what gets lost in the wayside is character and the essence of shepherding. Giving your life away to protect the sheep, to guard the doctrine, to guide the church. That was largely lost, and we're talking here mainstream American evangelicalism, even conservative mainstream evangelicalism. And so a recovery of that is going on. It happens in part through ministries like Nine Marks and seminaries that are doing good training. I think some of the Southern Baptist ones, Southern perhaps would be the number one, though there may be some slippage going on there in various ways. Midwestern Baptist, but anyways, it's the first thing you have to do to answer the question is, biblically, what is a pastor, elder, shepherd, and what are the qualifications there, and what is he called to do? And until you answer that question and get a lot of help answering that question, you really have no business thinking that you should be one. Or you really have no business looking for one or helping your church look for one. And so search committees are just, historically so weak on this. They don't know what to look for, and they get fed some database thing. And so I'm pessimistic, about the recent history, but I'm optimistic about some of the recovery that I see of these things, and small pockets where men are being told these things, and the Lord is growing pastors. And so the first image, I think, has to be shepherd, and it has to be about feeding. It has to be about guarding. And to me, you can summarize almost the work of the pastor, elder, shepherd as guarding the doctrine and guiding the church. And then you're looking at all the texts, 1 Timothy 3, Titus, and Acts 20, and so forth. So we have an elder class right now because we have to, because it's necessitated. So we're going through an elder training class right now with 5 guys, young guys. Most of them are young. They're too young. They may not be ready. Maybe 1 or 2 will be. But that's exactly what I'm doing with them. We're reading those books. We're reading those texts. I'm impressing upon them through many, many weeks what it means to help us, or have a plurality of elders that shepherd this flock. We're not looking to business models. We're not looking to best practices. We're not looking to methods. We're not looking to John Maxwell, although there's value in, probably leadership techniques and all that. But we're not looking to any of that. Do you know what an elder is? And do you feel called to do it? And that's probably the next thing. Is there an internal compulsion or desire to do it, coupled with an external affirmation, confirmation by your church, whether that's vocational eldership or pastoring or lay eldering or pastoring? I think that still needs to be there. So that would just be to start. And that's meant a whole world of difference to me in the fights that you have to have and knowing what you're fighting for.
Maybe just, Gavin, I think what you said was really good. Let me ask you for some clarification, just because I think that maybe some of our listeners in the terms, is there a difference between a pastor and an elder?
Right.
Maybe explain a little bit what you mean by.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. I'm jumping the ground with my feet, hitting the ground with my feet, spinning on that.
No, that's fine. I think.
Yeah. That's a great question, and one that you have to deal with. And in the best little elder books, they typically deal with that at the front. Mm-hmm. And you're going to Acts 20 in particular and showing that Paul uses 3 terms interchangeably for one office. And that's the episkopos word group, where that sounds obviously like, Episcopalians. Mm-hmm. Then you have the presbyteros word group, which is where you get all the Presbyterians. And then you get a shepherding word, elder, pastor, shepherd. there's different ways to translate those English words, but it all refers to this one office, which is this group of guys he's called from Miletus to talk to, generally called the elders. And then you have to understand that Paul says in a few places that he would instruct or do it himself or instruct others to establish a plurality of these men. Are we still there?
Yeah. I just zoomed.
Play with things.
A plurality of those men. And then from 1 Timothy 5, just last, you get this clear sense that you can actually set one apart for the purpose of preaching and teaching. Say that's his main job, and then you don't muzzle him. He Galatians 6, he should be able to earn his keep from the gospel. But he's still one of that plurality of elders, which can be described as any one of those three terms in the Bible. Having said all that, is there a cultural distinction to be made just that we need to acknowledge between elder and pastor? So I explained it biblically that there's not technically, but culturally there is, right? So people hear pastor and that's the guy who gets paid by the church and everything. So the way that we've done it is I'm one of the elders. We have a plurality of elders. I'm the guy who got hired by the church to be the full-time preacher, teacher person, but I'm one of the elders. And we don't call all the elders here pastors because of that cultural difference, because people understand a pastor to be that paid preacher representative of the church. And so there's a sense in which the pastor is the first elder, or the first among equals, would be the way that I would understand it. But push come to shove, we're together. We do things together. They sometimes have to stand in front of me, like when we left the denomination. They have to take bullets for me for them. We're together. But I guess the other thing is actually when push comes to shove, there's a sense in which they look to me. Because there's a sense of that cultural difference where, well, you hired this pastor guy to lead. So we sort of have to fight to maintain that plurality, and you have to effort to keep yourself as a paid pastor on equal terms. Don't let them, put you up on a pedestal all the time or just defer to you all the time. It's your job to, because of those cultural views of pastors, right? You have to work at that plurality. So that's a long answer to that question, but all those words are referring to the same guy, the same men, elders as we call them.
Yeah. No, that's good answer.
So that at times then, Gavin, your elders are looking to you as a first among equals, but at times you may lose votes. You may be on the, they may collectively go a different way than maybe you're leading, even because the same amount of authority, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, so there's no question that is a possibility.
Yeah.
The reality is that if you're functioning like a brotherhood, you don't want to do anything that you're not doing together.
Right.
And so we never, and I, to this day, in 16 years, I've seen it done in my home church and others, and it splits churches and stuff, but we never go before the church ununified with anything. And so if we can't come to terms with it ourselves, we're going to table it and revisit it until we're unified. That's our perspective on it. So we're not going to be like, we got 3-1 and John's out again. And then eventually John doesn't want to be an elder anymore, or the pastor. That's not how we would do it. In fact, I waited years on one gentleman who was not reformed because I treasured him. We treasured him and his leadership and his biblicism and his love for the church, but he was not reformed all the way in some key ways. And so we couldn't install our elder affirmation of faith because he was an elder. And I just kept telling him, I'm picking you over that. I'm picking you over that. And we stuck together. And he taught Sunday school and everything, but he would never cause trouble for me because we loved each other. We loved the church. And then he moved away, though, and it was heartbreaking. But that also then opened the door for us to finalize some Reformed identity things. And so if that just explains a little bit of, we got to do things together because the church needs to see us unified. That's how you bank. Well, you're not intentionally like banking trust, but that's how you gain trust.
Yeah.
Because the brotherhood have argued and wrestled and fought it out and come to an agreement, and they're laying this before you together in love and unity. I never want to leave an elder behind or hang him out, on the side of the meeting, or something like that.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's really helpful the way you put that. But I'm just saying that there's been times, and I can remember just one, but where I mentioned something about maybe we could do, and the other elders kind of shot it down, and I just immediately submitted to that, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because it was clearly that I was sort of in a minority position there, and we just dropped it. I submitted to that, and then we were unified in not doing it.
It depends on what the issue is, of course.
Yeah. Right. It wasn't a biblical issue. I mean, it was,
right. So it depends on whether in your conscience you can let it go, or whether it's the Trinity or something.
Sure.
But you're right. That's how it has to work both ways. We have to effort not to leave anyone behind, and then each individual has to be willing to submit their agenda to the group.
Yeah,
for the good of the church. And when you have that, when you have brothers that are fighting for that and working at that and living that out, man, I've experienced it, and it's a beautiful thing, and you see God's wisdom in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Thank you.
Yeah. When you read that, you desire to be an overseer, it's a noble task, you guys, just this conversation has, I think, really placed that. We haven't even talked about, we haven't gone through, 1 Timothy 3, some of those texts that really lay out the biblical qualifications. But certainly just by our conversation here, it is a noble task, a high calling. There is a process there. Gavin, I like, how you were talking about, an elder training, and some of those things that just, we really care about this because they're people that are leading and guiding the church. These are the people that are going to wrestle with these things. And so, now kind of switching gears just a little bit, say your pastor retires, or maybe a better, past retirement, you should have some warning, but say your pastor drops dead, or
that happened. That happened right here before me. That happened.
Okay. And how do you go about finding? I know there were several churches around here that were, pastors left kind of all at the same time, and
wow,
how do you go about in these days? Certainly you don't go to Union Theological Seminary. There's some obvious ones that is. Really,
you didn't like the thing with the plants and all that?
Yeah, they, apologize to, ask for repentance from plants. And
I thought that was
chapel.
Sorry, I'm being irreverent. Sorry.
No, I mean, they're not. It's not. Yeah, it's not really a seminary, but.
Can you narrow it down any more than that? Like maybe not.
Well, I guess that's what I'm thinking, kind of in a broad category. Where do we start? Where does the church? How do you put, even a procedure in place? Thinking about, say you got a pastor that's a young guy like you, and how do you think about the future of your church? How do your elders think about that and where they're going to go? And
well, so that narrows it.
How do you plan ahead? I guess maybe.
Right. Well, confessionally, haven't planned ahead, in terms of any succession or anything like that. I mean, I've never had the certainty that I won't be the one who closes the doors,
right.
on the thing. I mean, it's always felt fragile to me, and ministry is fragile. Small-ish church life is fragile. I've been through, church wars and week to week, are we going to keep going kind of thing. And so I just never really thought like that. However, if it's to the question of if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, which is the way I put it, which could happen. And so what would they do? My belief is that the church has a core of people who are healthy enough because of the way the Lord has blessed us in terms of regenerate church membership, qualified elders, and a focus on expository preaching or expositional preaching and discipleship and trust in the word. That there's enough people who would not just be like, oh no, the church is done because the pastor's dead, or let's call the home base because we don't have a home base. There are enough networking relationships with churches in the TPA and like-minded churches in the area. The allies and ministries we list on our website and more, everything from MacArthur and the Master's Seminary to, regardless of some recent questions, possible slippage, the Gospel Coalition, Nine Marks, and on and on. Ligonier, even though it's Presbyterian, might have some connections to Baptistic types. And then there's Piper's Church and the Treasuring Christ Together church planting network up there. And then there's like-minded seminaries as well. So these guys, like Luke peeked in here, and these younger guys, they're seminary trained thinkers and perusers and partakers of all of the content from all of these allies, and have learned with me and learned with us. And so I don't have any doubt that they would know who to call and where to turn to find somebody like-minded. He may even be here. It may be Luke. I mean, it may be one of these young guys, So there's no plan though. So that's not great, but I don't know. I don't.
If you were approaching retirement age, I would guess.
Yeah, no, right. I don't feel like it's this great work that needs to be, someone needs. Yeah, I don't have that feeling, of like this. Maybe I don't think big enough, but my mentality is more of a head down. Just keep preaching, keep shepherding. I don't think about what would happen if I get hit by a bus too much. I'll be with Jesus, and that will be far better.
Right. Yeah.
I think you can survive getting hit by a bus. I'm just saying that if I died when I got hit by a bus,
right, severely maimed, and you couldn't. Yeah.
I mean, maybe they'd keep me on if I just was severely maimed.
Yeah, but I guess my question maybe too is, and I think you answered this, was, if this is something that certainly pastors don't necessarily think about, but even churches don't really think about this until their pastor leaves.
Well, the reasons, Colt, are at least twofold on the pastor side and the church side. The pastor side is because they typically have gone in the mainstream. That main line is a whole other thing, right? Mm-hmm. But the mainstream evangelical church, you go through this search process. Right. And there are regional people, and you're hired and fired by the church committee or board or whatever. And then search committees are also sort of beholden to the same system. There are variations. And so they're not thinking about forming a search committee. We don't have to search for a pastor. Why should we be thinking about that? We don't form a search committee until there's an opening. And it's just a way of thinking that is not very commensurate with growing men who have a growing desire for shepherding. And there isn't a thinking about how do they make these men? I don't know, but the Home Office sends us a list of 5 that match a printout. Well, that's beyond me. I don't know how you find. I mean, it's not beyond God's sovereign control. I'm just saying that system seems dumb, to me.
Yeah. Good word there, dumb.
Sometimes the simplest words are the most.
Let's talk a little bit about here's where I want to go, and I'll just tell you kind of where I want to go. I want to talk about, and you mentioned this early, the Timothy Pastoral Apprenticeship. That's kind of where I'm going. I want you to talk a little bit about that because I want to hear about it. But let's kind of back up a little bit from there and talk about the current state of seminary education, how that's going. Why not just, I guess my overall view is, why not just find a seminary that you support? Why train, why take that responsibility on yourself to train away off a different model? So the state of current seminary education, right? There's always been this, in my mind, there's always been this tension between the church and higher education. I think we see that in our denomination, in the seminary that we support. There's just this, it just seems like this ongoing tension. Change in higher education is often mimicked, I think, in the seminary too. So maybe just speak about that for a.
Does anyone want to start? I got to stop my video for just a sec and fix something. I can hear though. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, John, do you think that's fair? Right, that there's a tension between the church and higher education? I mean, am I saying?
I'll tell you what, our friend's back. Let's go to him.
Oh. Are you sure? Okay. Well, the model question is a great one. And just, for us, it isn't that our involvement with the TPA and having Ryan Franchuk on would be a great idea. I mean, if you really wanted to dig in, it'd be like an infomercial, though, is the thing. But he's a really deep thinker. I don't know if you know Ryan very well, but he runs the TPA from Del Rapids and Timothy Pastoral Apprenticeship. What that is just to be clear about what it is an alternative elder pastor ministry training program that's localized in partnering local churches. And so the TPA either places a man who they find or who finds them, or in our case, guys that come through and then they become part of the program, but they do it from a distance or driving to a hub like Del or Sioux Falls. But they do their training, studying ministry experience in that local church, and they're explicitly mentored by the pastor or the group of elders or whatever. You don't graduate with any accredited degree. You're limited probably to the region and the churches, unless there are like-minded churches that could investigate that or whatever and find that it was sufficient. So, by being a part of the TPA and participating in it, it's not for me a rejection of all the other models. It is, though, an acknowledgement that the main traditional model has significant weaknesses. Particularly as time changes and the number of faithful, deeply theological seminaries decreases. We went to a seminary. There's lots of other ones that are increasingly regional training grounds. That would be my phrase for these seminaries that try not to offend anybody, and they try to appeal regionally to as many people as they can. And so you don't know what anyone around you believes, and you don't know what the professor believes, and some people, that's fine, but it's not a model I would recommend for a lot of people, and I wouldn't do it over again. So there are other models too now with technology. We have our elder I mentioned earlier who runs the Navigators. He's moving away to Eau Claire to run the Navigators there soon, and he's starting seminary online through Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, which is a great school. Owen Strand is there, and a bunch of other dudes, and he's starting a degree there, all online. And he's gonna. We worked through and looked, and that was a model that fit him, you know. So there's lots of ways to do it. And every time one of these guys comes to us, you know, I don't know how it happens. Trent was one. We have now a newer guy that's been with us for 5 years, but he's just starting. Adam is his name. He's 25 and just a great dude. And, I have to have that conversation with him, an honest conversation about, okay, I'm not trying to get you to do any particular thing. What I want to do is help you discover the Lord's will for your life. But what that means is I have to be honest about what the models are and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then you got to make the call. You know, I don't want him to do the TPA. I mean, selfishly, I want him to stay, but I want him to do what the Lord is leading him to do, and that he discovers is, you know, with counsel from me and others, is what the Lord would have him do. So the TPA fits for some guys who have bought into giving their lives away to shepherd the flock. They don't necessarily need, you know, a degree on a piece of paper. They have to be sure, though, that they don't need it because it's a choice, you know.
Yeah.
You can't get a PhD if you never got the master's degree. Typically, I mean, you know, you have to go in stages. So if you do something that replaces the MDiv, but it's not an accredited degree that you get, well, you can't go on and get increasing education past that. You'd have to go get the MDiv or something. Anyways, that's minutia, but it's a model that works as the church splinters, right? And models show their weaknesses. Seminaries are crumbling financially. Technology is increasing. And if the church can do this, well, the church is the best place to train men. But you tell me, I mean, how many churches do you think, and I don't think we can do it that well, but we can do it. I mean, the Lord willing, we can, you can give your life to someone. You can give your life to a young man, you know, but how many churches even have a view to that these days? That isn't what I grew up with, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, I have an elder in my church. He's a young elder, and he wants more training. Would this be TPA be something that that kind of guy should look into? Then he just wants to be more equipped to be able to pastor, and
I believe so.
Is it what kind of expense compared to a seminary?
It doesn't cost anything.
TPA doesn't cost anything.
Nope.
Wow.
And we us supporting churches get our churches to buy into it. I mean, not financially. I mean, they have to catch the vision for it, and then hopefully budget some amount. So we started small. We send them $1,000 a year. I buy books for them out of resource distribution fund or something like that in the budget. And so it's just a slow process of prioritizing it in the budgeting, and they have to find a way to, you know, work and everything. So if they're already working and they want to increase their knowledge, you can do the TPA. You'd have to travel every, like, probably Tuesday or something to the class, or go by Zoom. I think they do now. And the pastors share the training, and it's hardcore. You know, it's commensurate with like a comparison between traditional homeschooling and classical Christian, where classical Christian is like way deeper, like rhetoric and you know. So TPA compared to like a regional training ground is like classical Christian too. So in the TPA, you're doing Greek and Hebrew and some super church history stuff, and you're going deep. You're going like Machen like level of type stuff with pastors from all the TPA churches. And then we share the teaching. Then I haven't done it yet. I keep saying no, but one of these years, we will get in there and help teach. So I think it could be great continuing education for elders. Yep.
Wow. And how about just for a pastor, maybe that's had some seminary training? Is that something to keep? I mean, is it that deep to kind of keep?
It depends probably on what they're looking for. A lot of pastors have churches that I'm not in that situation where the church can. I wouldn't ask. Can you pay for a degree? I want to get another degree. Mm-hmm. I know pastors who are in that situation, so the church will pay for you to fly to seminary and get that extra degree, and you just want to up your game, like you want to get that doctor of ministry. But if it's a pastor who, is in smaller situations, maybe don't have the MDiv, mainly recently found this deep well, of Reformed Baptistic stuff, it could be a way to go about training. All you have to do is, and I don't mean to do an infomercial for it. I just believe in it as a model because I believe in these guys. And I've seen it have an effect. So all you have to do is you could contact me or we could get you in touch with Ryan. It's a small operation. So, you can get your questions answered quickly.
Yeah, I'm glad we have you here.
It's a great group of guys. I'm not including myself.
Oh,
in that. I'm talking about those guys.
Yeah. One more question. So, like you were saying, regional training grounds are pretty broad, and they don't really take positions.
Yeah.
So this PTA program, what lane you driving down there?
Yeah, the TPA is explicitly done by Reformed Baptistic guys.
Okay.
Most of the churches are North American Baptist churches, which is probably neither here nor there. It's Reformed Baptistic guys who partnered together for the training of pastors in an alternative model.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So it's unapologetically Reformed, and we could go into detail. We're talking there about soteriology, right? That's what I mean. We don't baptize babies and
right. That's why you say Baptist.
Yeah. Reformed soteriology, the sovereignty of God, meticulous, absolute sovereignty of God, and then Baptistic, of course. Complementarian, those seem to be the things that shake out for these groups, these churches that partner together on this. So
cool.
I was thinking too that one of the things that our central district does is we like to we plant churches and there's quite a budget for planting churches and putting money into that. If we're gonna get guys from within ourselves, our state region, it would be kind of cool to be able to train your own guys to be able to put into.
Well, where do they get them now? Is it from the seminary?
No, no. I mean, that would be a possibility, but we haven't.
So where do they come from now in your sort of neck of the woods?
Well, and that's kind of our issue. Usually, somebody that knows somebody, or we have a guy in Minnesota that is a church plant there. That he was a college roommate. Before these guys ever went into ministry, they were a college roommate of one of the pastors in our denomination, and he was out in Seattle with Mark Driscoll and Mars Hill, and then that whole thing kind of fell apart, and he came back with he came back.
I'm sorry, a lot happens in that sentence there.
Yeah, right.
A lot of backstory, right, in that sentence.
Right.
Fell apart.
Right. And then he went back, he was working in a church out there and then went back to Minnesota and got in touch with us there and really wanted to plant a church and had a lot of good background there. And so went through the assessment process. We usually have third party assessment deal that they go through, and So, and he went to seminary. I think he went to Bethlehem, or not Bethlehem, Bethel Seminary, a little bit different. In Minneapolis there, and he's a good guy, but it's just kind of all over the place.
Is that? I mean, that's kind of like a traditional reality, I would say that my home denomination, to the degree, in my home church, to the degree that I keep up, seems similar to that. Probably a little more utilization of sort of the region guy and printouts, and matches where a church fills out a database and then candidates fill out a database and then they churn out reports literally. And then the region person gives you the top 10, 80% and up match or whatever,
Right.
And then it's up to the local leadership. But they could be from anywhere. They could be from Calgary. They could be from Alabama. They could be from Huron. You know what I mean? It could be from anywhere. And so you sort of give yourself to whatever process you have traditionally found yourself in. And I think a lot of churches, traditional churches that haven't experienced any theological, biblical tumult or renewal, they're probably still very much doing it that way. Mm-hmm. I think that something that differentiates a church like ours is death. Until a church dies, and becomes desperate, or is planted by a guy or a group of people with a whole new set of ways to think about this, it probably doesn't change very easily or very quickly. So go to a traditional country church in the middle of South Dakota, and a lot of what we're talking about here is a foreign language. I mean, it's a what are you talking about? And that doesn't mean I'm not saying they're bad people or anything like that. I'm just saying that's traditionally not how they do it. Right. And for me, this is like an old pair of jeans now, but it's very different from what I saw growing up. I would have been very allergic to any of this, even discipleship, by the way. You didn't talk about discipling or one-on-one mentoring or any of that. There was nothing of it. That was weird stuff, Evangelism, we didn't do that. Then what are you talking about? We have events, And so I just think that this is something that we forget sometimes as we change and develop, and that the way we do it now isn't the way we did it, and that most people aren't doing it this way, and it's very threatening and weird. And impossible seeming, Well, you're saying we're supposed to raise our own elders and pastors? What are you talking about? From where?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Doesn't that seem like that would strike a lot of people as, well, that's some fanciful utopian future or something? Where do these men come from? I asked myself the same question, and yet, we've had a string of them, and I don't know. I just am in a place where that happened,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, no, this has been a good conversation. We'll have to continue it. I want to get Gavin on here and talk about.
Do we have to be done?
Divisive issues.
Oh yeah. You tried on reparations. I wasn't falling for that. No. Yeah, I need to watch some more Eric Mason before I'm prepared to.
Yeah. I was telling him about possible things we could talk about. And one was a biblical defense of reparations.
I have listened to the Virgil Walker and Daryl Harrison reparations thing from months ago.
Yeah,
that's the full extent of what I've read and listened to about it.
Yeah. They do a good job on that Just Thinking podcast.
Yeah, I've appreciated them as well. Maybe we could talk about rioting or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think we've probably went on long enough here. But well, thanks, Gavin, for being on. And
yeah, thanks for asking.
Really appreciate that. And so until next time.
Until we meet again, brothers.